You always think of the ocean or the mainland, but do you ever think of the area in between that's left after the waves go back? We're talking about the intertidal zone. An intertidal zone is the area between tide marks exposed to air at low tide. Another name for it is the littoral zone. The intertidal zone is the area you usually would be splashing around in or playing in when you would be at the beach. Small and uncomplicated organisms seek shelter in this zone. Waves' actions can wash away the organisms, so they have to burrow themselves under sand or rocks. The intertidal zones are the high, middle, low, and spray zones. Different organisms adapt to the different zones because they have such huge changes in conditions. They have huge changes in moisture, temperature, turbulence, and salinity. The moisture changes can go from very wet when the tide is up and very dry when the tide is low, depending on where the water is. The turbulence, or pressure, can push the animals around, so they have to burrow themselves under rocks or shells or other hard things. The temperature can vary from the air's temperature to the water's temperature. There are lots of variations in salt because the water is washed around. The organisms live in different zones because the conditions vary. In the spray zone, there are barnacles, lichens, lice, limpets, and other vegetation. The spray zone is the area where the outside world meets the marine world, and it is usually a rocky area. The highest rocks above the high tide zone make up what the spray zone is. A strip of black algae marks the end of the spray zone. The rocks below that area are covered with barnacles. That's why the organisms are usually like molds or moss that stick to trees or rocks. In the high tide zone, there are barnacles, anemones, crabs, stars, and algae. In the middle tide zone are sponges, mussels, snails, and sea lettuce. In the low tide zone live organisms that live underwater, seaweed, shrimp, and sea cucumbers. Some water stays between rocks and makes tide pools. The tide pools can make a whole other world for the organisms that live there. They have their own little area protected from other organisms. When fresh water meets salt water, they make estuaries, such as a salt marsh or a mangrove. In salt marshes, the most common plant is cordgrass. Tidal channels run through it, so waves will be broken when entering the grass, which makes a nice little area for organisms to live. A mangrove is an area with short little trees in water. Basically, its nutrients is smelly, muddy water. The trees will break up the wind on most coastlines. Estuaries can pick up harmful substances like chemicals and sewage. Organisms that have adapted to that environment and started living in it can be affected by these things. Today, when people fish in them, they can catch fish that carry these things. People should try to protect estuaries so it won't harm animals or other humans. Next time you go to the shore, you will know all about the other world that's right before your eyes.